Hello, has the class started?
Okay, so just to give an explanation, we do have a double portion this coming week. It's Acharei Mot and Kedoshim. And the way it works is as follows, just should really show you, should take a chumash. In the course of a year, we go through the entire 5 books of Moses, the entire chumash. And the way it works is we start the Shabbos after the holiday of Sukkot. We start with Bereshit, beginning of Genesis. And every week, we read another portion, except if there's a holiday, so then we read something related to the holiday. But the way the weeks go, depending on how the holidays fall out and depending on the calendar year, we actually have to finish by the end of the year. So certain portions are sometimes joined together with others. I have a chart actually to show you. So here is Chumash Bereshit, the book of Genesis. Here's Chumash Shemos, the book of Exodus. Here's Chumash Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. Here's Numbers, and here is Deuteronomy, Devarim. So we are in the middle of Leviticus, Chumash Vayikra. This past week we did Sazri and Mitzarah together, and this week we're doing Acharei Mot and Kedoshim together. Okay, any questions? Please don't hesitate to ask. And again, the cycle works out so that by the end, after the high holidays and after the holiday of Sukkot, we finish Rizos Bracha on Sukkot Torah, and then we start Bereshit over again. So depending on how the calendar works out, so we're going to try to go through Acharei Mot first, Parsha facts for Acharei Mot. Chapter 16, verse 1 in the book of Vayikra and Leviticus, 80 verses in the portion, 28 commandments, most related to Yom Kippur. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. Now, in the how many of you have Kedoshim? Some of you, a lot of you have Kedoshim already. Yeah, some of you have. So let me. Who doesn't have a Chumash? You have a Chumash, Elgi? You all have? Okay, so let me just point out something you should be aware of. The way the Torah readings work, on Shabbos we have 7 plus 1 people called up to the Torah to read. So if you go to Parshat Acharei Mot, which is on page 636, so the portion begins there. So what happens is, we're doing 2 portions, do we call up 14 people? No. We still call up 7, but we elongate the aliyah. So let me give you an example. Take a look at page 640. You see in the margin on the right side, in small letters, it says Sheni. That means the second aliyah. So when Acharei Mot is read by itself, that's where the second person would be called up. If you don't understand what I'm saying, please stop me. Everyone good? Again, the margin on 640 says Sheni. That's where the second person would be called up. Go to page 642. And in the margin there, it says on the right side, Shalishi. That's where the third person is called up. But in brackets, it says Sheni. Meaning to say, when Acharei Mot and Kedoshim are together, that's where the second person is called up. So the aliyahs are elongated. Is this clear? Henry, are you with me?
I think so.
If you don't, please ask, okay? So on the margin on page 644, you have on the very bottom, Revi'i, which is the fourth aliyah, fourth person called up. That's only when Acharei Mot is by itself.
Excuse me, as long as we're on that subject, Rabbi.
That sounds like we're going to be talking about something totally different now. Dave, I know your introduction. Go ahead.
Okay. It's similar. I mean, like this morning, we read the Torah. And we only
Dave, we did not read the morning this Torah. I don't know when you went to shul, but where you went to shul. But today is Sunday. They did not read the Torah today.
Yep.
Dave?
We did it. We split it up.
Dave?
Oh, I got confused. On Monday, for example, Monday.
Tomorrow.
We're gonna read the.
Just a little bit of Acharei Mot, that's all.
We only read
the first part. That's
and
it.
then we
That's
divide it into thirds.
That's right. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about now, but I appreciate it.
Division.
Yes, it is division.
And you look in here and you
Dave,
can't tell.
Dave, that's why you have the back of the siddur. It shows you where the breaks are. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. Bottom 644 is Revi. That's the fourth aliyah. That's when Acharei Mot is by itself. That's where it is. On 646 in the right-hand margin, it says Chamishi, which means the fifth aliyah, the fifth person called up, but only when it's read by itself. And this week it'll be Shalishi, the third person being called up. All right. So, and this is going to be the pattern throughout. Take a look on page 652. It's Shavi'i on in the margin there for the seventh aliyah. By the way, next year I think is a leap year, a Jewish leap year, which in Judaism, in the secular calendar, you get one day. Jews give a portion, give a whole month is a leap year. You know, like it's really a good Jewish portion. You know, so that's what it's an example when we will split many of the double portions. So here you have Shavi'i, the seventh aliyah, and then Revi'i, the fourth aliyah. And the fourth aliyah is the one that will go into Parshas Kedoshim, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Take a look, just to give you one final example. Go to page 660. On page 660, it says Sheni, second aliyah. That's when Kedoshim is by itself. And then this is Chamishi, the fifth aliyah, when it's read together with Acharei Mot. Okay, so the pattern is going to continue that way. So you're having the same amount of aliyahs, they're just they're longer, that's all. All right.
Does it go right into Kedoshim?
Yes, we go straight. We don't pause, do not stop, do not collect $200, just go straight.
Your VE is going to actually read both.
Revi goes into both. Revi, the fourth one, is the bridge between the two portions.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, let's talk about, yes. Aliyah means to go up. It's when a person's called up to the Torah. Okay? I'm glad you asked. Because somebody else also had the same question, but they didn't want to ask, but I'm glad you asked.
But the instructions are only for men, right? The stuff you're saying was not for us.
Well, it is for everybody, because if you're following along the reading, you need to know where we're up to. Hey, he didn't stop at the stop sign. He kept on going. Stop. No, he's not going to stop. He's going because it's elongated. It's for everybody. Got it? All right. So Parshat Acharei Mot. Parshat Acharei Mot talks about going into the Holy of Holies. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, and later on the temple. The Mishkan was the portable temple that the Jewish people had in the desert, and the and the Beis Hamikdash was the temple was in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. Parenthetically, by the way, the first temple was there before Islam existed, so just to be aware of historical perspective, important to know. And the Kohen Gadol, they were different. There was the yard, there was and then the Mishkan itself that had the holy, which had the menorah in it that some of you may remember a little bit about, and the altar for incense and the showbread table. Then there was the Holy of Holies. That had the Aron, that had the Ark. No one went into that the entire year, with one exception, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement. And that's what Acharei Mot is talking about. And this is an important idea. The idea of sanctity and not everybody can have access to anything and everything is an important idea for us. Let me back up a little bit first. The Kabbalists tell us that everything in the world fits into one of three categories: Olam, Shana, Nefesh. Olam is universe, meaning place. Shana, year, meaning time. And Nefesh, soul, a person. Okay, so it's Olam, Shana, Nefesh. Time, place, and ourselves. So Yom Kippur was ideally the holiest day of the year, where ideally the holiest person, the high priest, would go into the holiest place, the Holy of Holies. So that was a intersection of all three holy things. The lesson for us, among many, but one of them is the idea is there a concept called sanctity. There's something that is off limits, that isn't public. You have people, do you remember there was a thing called phone booths? And there were actually booths where you could close the door and have a private conversation. Doesn't exist anymore. And forget about the cell phones. Even before cell phones, the booths became open. And people had, I was in the bank one time, and a guy on his cell phone, he's talking about his marriage problems to the guys on the phone with, and I felt like giving him my business card. If you want, I can help you. I do counseling. It just looks, hello, it's public. You don't have to talk about everything. Expressions of love. People are making out in public, like as if they're in the privacy of their home. And there's the concept of there's no boundaries. I remember when Bill Clinton was running for president. So he had a town hall meeting, and someone asked him what type of underwear he wore. And he answered the question, like, who cares? Like, it's just like, you just say, it's none of your business. There's such a concept, it's just, there's some things that are private and some things that are public. So here in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple and in the Mishkan, it was clear certain areas the Kohen could go into and couldn't go into. Jews could go in, or were they ritually clean? Were they not ritually clean? And that's an important concept for us to know these things. And part of what was done when the sacrifices were brought was confession. The confession, to confess to God what we did wrong. Why is confession an important idea? Ding, ding, ding. Correct. Very good, Alicia. Right. It's acknowledging that you're taking responsibility. I made a mistake. And that's an important idea. There were two goats that were used on Yom Kippur, and they did like a raffle. Put one that said La Hashem, for God, which was sacrificed, and the other was La Zazel, that was sent away to a mountain and thrown down a mountain. And Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch has a very interesting idea about this. And he tells us that the idea here is to teach us that there is no such thing as neutral. You're either doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. And, if life is like an escalator, you're either going up or you're going down. And on Yom Kippur, when a person's supposed to be asking for atonement, a person has to look look how they live their lives. There's no such thing as, I'm just doing. Well, what are you doing? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it lead you to good things, does lead you to bad things. And that's the idea here of the two, the one of the ideas of the raffle between the one that's being a sacrifice to God and the one that's being thrown down the mountain. We have eternal commandments about Yom Kippur. It's like Shabbos, historically a day of atonement. That's when Moshe came down after praying for the Jewish people to forgive them for the sin of the golden calf. When they made the golden calf, and Moshe didn't come down right away according to their calculations, and the first tablets were broken, Moshe came down on Yom Kippur with the second tablets. So it's historically a time of atonement. We have special service in the temple, and it's the Torah readings.
Boy, I'm sorry. What does Azazel mean?
As Lazazel mean, it just is to that place that where it's thrown down. We do fasting. We don't do work or anointing ourselves. We don't wear leather shoes. We don't have marital relations on Yom Kippur. And we read this week's portion, Acharei Mot. A lot of it is read on Yom Kippur because it has to do with the service that took place on Yom Kippur in the temple. And really, the Yom Kippur is a powerful, very powerful day in the Jewish calendar year because it's a time of tshuva, of repentance. And repentance is the idea of rectifying our past mistakes. And that's a big deal to be able to do that, a gift that God gave us. And interestingly enough, there's two different aspects to it. There's sins against God, which if we repent, if we're sorry about that, and we regret doing the wrong thing or making a commitment not to do it again, we can get atonement for. But then there's other type of things that we have to get atonement for, which even though God may have commanded us not to do that, but first we have to make atonement to a person if we hurt somebody. In other words, if we stole, God forbid, from somebody, so a person would say, God, I'm sorry I stole, but I'm still keeping the money. No, that doesn't work that way. You have to return what you stole. You have to make amends to the person, and then you can come to God to ask forgiveness. Okay, so there's two aspects of that. I'm sorry? I'm not sure what you're asking, if there's an order. Yes, you have to first make amends to the person, then to God. Correct. Because if you didn't make amends to the person, then God says, don't come to me, go to the person first and make amends to them first. You know? And what's important is there's a lot of services that are done on Yom Kippur, and in the temple there were things were done. But the Dubna Magid was a great speaker who, a Magid means a teller, a speaker of self. I'm sorry? Speaker of stories. Speaker of stories and self-improvement. And he lived in Europe in pre-World War II. And he always used parables to explain the points that he made. And someone asked him, how come you always use parables? So he said, I'll give you a parable to explain why you always use parables. He says, there was this fellow who goes into the forest and he sees there was an archer there. And the archer was amazing. He shot a bunch of arrows, and all of the arrows were in the center, smack in the middle of the bullseye. And he was like, how'd you do that? He says, pretty easy. I shoot the arrow, and then I draw a circle around it. So the Dubna Magid said, I do the same thing. I have a bunch of stories, and then when I find something appropriate, I apply it to this. So he talked about the work that we need to do for Yom Kippur, for the Day of Atonement. He said the parable is like the guy who's from the small town, he goes to the big city for the first time, and he hears bells ringing, and he asks, what's going on? He says, there's a fire. He says, a fire? Wow. And after a while, the bells stop ringing. He says, what happened? The fire's out. That's amazing. And he goes back to his town with a big bell, and he says, guys, I have the solution to our problems if there's a fire. What's the solution? I was in the big town, and they rang the bell, and that's what we'll do. And they said, wow, that's amazing. So there's a fire in the town, and he's ringing away, and the town burns down. It says, what's the matter with it? I don't know. In the big town, that's what they did. They rang the bell, and everything was fine. It says, go back to the town and find out what happens. He goes back to the town. What happened if I ring the bell? Well, everyone comes with buckets, and they put out the fire. Oh, I mean, the bell isn't what puts out the fire. It's the bell is the alarm to get you to put out the fire. And says the Dubra Maggid, that's the idea. This all of this work that we do in Yom Kippur with fasting and not working and not wearing leather shoes, etc. That's all part of the process to get us to do self-improvement. So just doing those alone is good, but it's not the whole picture. So we're told when the Mishkan was up that we can't do the service outside of it. It has to be in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. We're told not to consume blood. And that's why we salt meat to draw out the blood so we don't consume it. And we have a mitzvah to cover the blood of a bird that is sacrificed. And again, it's refinement, not like animals that just get to it and just have the blood all over the place. There's a law in the Parsha about not following the non-Jewish laws. What that means is, obviously, laws that are part of the laws you're supposed to listen to. But it means the customs, like watching gladiators kill each other. That's not a Jewish thing to do. Or superstitions, religious or social customs. I'll give you an example. Halloween, trick-or-treating. So, sounds like fun, but if it's not a Jewish thing, then we shouldn't do it. And it's interesting, by the way, the contrast of it. In Halloween, people are going on asking for gifts. Lahavdil, to separate between the holy and mundane. And Purim, what do? We give gifts. So it's a difference that way. There's another important verse, V'chai b'hem. We're supposed to live the mitzvos. What does that mean? We're supposed to live the mitzvahs? That means that only in most circumstances, I repeat, can desecrate Shabbos to save a life. You need to go take someone to the hospital. I don't drive on Shabbos. Well, now you do, because to save a life, a chayim, you're supposed to live. There are some exceptions. If a person tells you, I have to kill you, I'll kill you if you don't kill the other person, then you have to be willing to give up your life. And a few laws like that. But most of the time, you're supposed to you can desecrate a law to save a life. Yes? They can take a taxi. The husband doesn't drive at all, even during the week. Right? Yeah, okay. So you remind me of a very funny story. So the answer to your question, then I'll tell you the funny story. I have this rule in my head that if a story pops into my head when I'm giving a class, it's divine that I have to share it with you. Okay. So what happened was, but let me tell you the answer to your question. They can take a taxi, they can take whatever they need. And that's what many people do. It's a lot easier in a certain sense to do that. Even if you would drive, if time isn't of the essence, it's even better to have somebody, because when you get to the hospital, you have to leave the car on. It gets complicated with Jewish law. But you can drive, and if you don't drive, you can take an Uber or a taxi, whatever. Yeah, that's correct. You can call. So the funny story was, there's a couple that I know that the husband didn't drive and the wife drove. And when she went to have her first baby, she drove to the hospital because he didn't know how to drive. And she said, "That's it. I want you to learn how to drive. I want you to drive into the hospital. That's the right thing to do." So he said, "Fine." So he learned how to drive. He got a license. And then it was time, whatever. The second baby, she had to go to the hospital. And he says, "Would you like some water?" And she says, "No, I'm fine." So he went to take some water, and then he breaks a glass and he cuts his hand. I can't drive. I can't drive. My hand is cut. He's bandaging his hand. And she says, "Okay, I'll drive this time." So they drive, and they come out with a wheelchair for her to go into delivery. And he sits down it, and she says, "It's not for you, for your hand, it's for me." It's a very funny story. It was funny to me. In any event, but the answer to your question is yes. You can call an Uber, you can call it a taxi. It's not a problem. But that's v'chai b'hem, the importance of living the mitzvahs. And there's other lessons in it as well, that do it not out of rote, but do it with fervor and excitement. You should live in it. The second part of the parsha deals with forbidden sexual relationships. And interestingly enough, we read this by the afternoon service on Yom Kippur, which is a little surprising. Well, what does it have to do with Yom Kippur? And the answer really is that the holiness of the day of Yom Kippur is not just in the synagogue. It's supposed to affect us throughout the entire year, wherever we live and whatever we do. And for some forbidden relationships would be close relatives, adultery, a woman during the menstrual cycle, homosexuality, bestiality, and homosexuality is looked upon as an abomination by God. And I want to be very clear. We're not saying that homosexuals are abomination. It's the act. It's not the person. The person has a tendency. That's a problem. It's hard for them. I understand, but it's not the tendency, because that could have been given to them by God. But it's the act that's the abomination. So, and bestiality is another example. So these are some of the prohibitions and forbidden relationships that we have. The Torah also tells us that the holiness of the land of Israel, and if we don't live up to that, then we're thrown out of the land. You're in God's palace, so we have to live up to that. So and unfortunately, that happened twice already. We had 2 temples, and we didn't live up to what we were supposed to do. We were thrown out, and hopefully that will not happen again. It seems like there's no pattern of that to happen again.
No, but can I say something?
You just did. Go ahead.
Can I say something?
You can say something else.
So I feel like for the story with the temples, they were destroyed because we weren't, like you said, doing stuff that we were supposed to.
We want the best we could be, yes.
But the temples are gone, and I know a lot of times we like, because we don't have the temple, we can't do these and we can't do like sacrifice and stuff like this.
Right.
We all, I feel like individually, ourselves or our bodies are a shell. It's not our souls, the body. When you die, your physical body leaves, but your soul lives on forever.
Right.
So we have to take care of us as a temple and stuff like this. And so how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other, and how we treat everybody else, like our neighbors. I feel like our temples now is like social media and the news and everybody treating Israel and Jews mean and stuff like this, because everybody is not perfect, but we still have a higher. So I think we had it with the Kabbalah guy that you had class here before, explain it, that we have a different level that can spring up, but other people don't. And we have to do things and treat people better than just the regular person, because the Tikkun Olam, repairing the world and stuff like this.
Okay.
But we get all of this. People are like, why do people treat all the Jews like this and stuff like this? We have to fix ourselves, fix our own home first, and
Yes.
treat everybody else before we expect the world to accept us.
Yeah, well, the world may not accept us even if we're doing the right thing, but you are correct. We have to work on ourselves. I agree with you. So let's talk a little bit about Parshas Kedoshim. Kedoshim comes from the word kadosh. Some of may have known that word. The kiddush, Friday night, we make kiddush, we sanctify the day of Shabbos. Or Kedoshim Tiyu, the verse begins that God says we should be holy. What does that mean to be holy? How do you become holy? So it is an interesting. Webster's dictionary defines a human being as being an individual of the species of primate mammal that walks on 2 feet, is related to the great apes, and is distinguished by a greatly developed brain with capacity for speech and abstract reasoning. That's not the Jewish approach. Reb Shimshon Pinchas of blessed memory says, a human being is an individual with the potential to be close to God. Capsulizes it much better, I think. All right. So how can we be holy? So some examples. Number 1, aspiring to be holy by emulating God. He's merciful, we should be merciful. He is kind, we should be kind. He does loving kindness, we should do loving kindness. Number 2, separating ourselves from temptation. Don't put ourselves in a situation which is challenging for us. And avoiding that temptation is a way of being holy. And then there is a very powerful idea, Kadesh atzmacha b'mutulach, sanctifying what we're allowed to do. I'm allowed to do this. Let me give you an example. I earned money honestly, and I purchase a hero sandwich that's kosher, and I make the proper blessings, but do I really need to eat a foot long sandwich? Is that a little bit over the top? Probably. So sanctifying ourselves, even in the things that we're allowed to do, is part of being holy as well. So there's the idea of emulating God, there's the idea of separating ourselves from temptation and sanctifying what we're allowed to do. It talks about honoring our parents, and that includes taking care of their needs. We don't sit in their seats. We don't call them by their first names. That's become like a popular thing now, which I have adverse reaction to. And what it says is you should be respectful and honoring. Make sure to take care of their needs. Now, interesting, the Torah tells us an interesting thing when it talks about a man should fear or have awe of his mother and father, but in the Ten Commandments it says honor your father and your mother. So why is it reversed? Mother, father, father, mother. And Rashi, the premier commentary, teaches us that naturally people will honor their mothers more. So the Torah says, honor your father and your mother. And naturally, you will have more fear for your father than you will for your mother. So that's what it says, fear and give awe to your mother and father. So it's reversed that way. Notice, though, by the way, it doesn't say you're required to love your parents. Why not? Okay, well, we do. We're required to love God, so even that's a feeling. So that's a good question. Maybe for another time, why we have that about God. But not all parents are lovable necessarily, but you still have to be respectful. There are extreme examples of abuse and stuff like that. That need a question a rabbi what to do, how to handle this. But in normal circumstances, I'm not required to love them, but I have to give them honor and respect. Okay, so that's an important distinction to be aware of. And then it says keeping Shabbat. So what's the connection? What if the parent says, don't keep Shabbos? So now you have a conflict between two commandments, keeping Shabbos and honoring your parents. And that's where the Torah says, no, the parent, it may not be their fault, they may not have learned, but they're required to keep Shabbos too. So if they tell you to go something against the Torah, you're not required to listen to them for that. And again, there's discussion to ask a rabbi how to handle things well so that it's respectful at the same time. But at the same time, doing God's will is primary, and therefore, if there's a conflict between what the parent wants and what God wants, then you follow what God wants. Not having idols. Oh, not too many people have idols today. What's that show? American what? All right. And the idea of rock stars and sports figures and actors and actresses that people just like have to ask them their opinion about anything and everything in the world and are, really care about it. How about there's someone who waited 7 hours to get a CD signed by a rapper? That's type of idol worship. Yeah.
Is like something you look up to the same as having an idol?
No. And the answer is no, but it also depends why you're looking up to them. Because Tom Cruise saves the world in Mission Impossible. That doesn't count. No, then you should definitely look. I hope people have role models. I think it's very important for people to have role models and to have people that they respect and will ask, get advice from, because you learn from people with role models. Even if they're imperfect, it's very good to have a role model. That's not idol worship. But I'm talking about worshiping people because of their status or whatever in the world. Like that's not, we should always look for people that can inspire us and be grateful for them if they've done good things, etc. Good question. The Torah tells us about gifts to the poor, not only giving charity, but also within the field itself. There is gleanings that are left to the poor. We're going to find that in a few weeks with the story of Ruth, the righteous convert, how she went to get, in other words, for example, if there's a corner of the field that a Jewish farmer was required to leave for the poor, or if he cuts and 1 or 2 stalks fall in this area here, he can't pick them up. Let the poor come afterward, pick it up. The importance of having honesty in business dealings. And paying workers on time. Avraham, the first patriarch, his animals were muzzled because he didn't want them to eat from anybody else's field without permission. So he would only take off the muzzles if it was a free field or if it was on his own fields. Putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. So that sounds pretty horrific. A person's blind and you're going to put a stone in front of him. But it doesn't only literally mean that. It also means giving someone bad advice on purpose. That's called putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. Interesting. Another example of putting a stumbling block in front of the blind is lending somebody without money, without witnesses. Why is that a stumbling block before the blind? Lending somebody money without witnesses. Why is that a stumbling block for the blind?
You didn't lend me the money.
Right. People have a tendency to forget or being dishonest. Either way. Also, remember we talked about not speaking ill about other people. What happens if someone asks you, is this a good match for me? Is this a good match? Should I date this person? And you know real information that it's not a good idea. And you don't say anything. Oh, I don't want to speak badly. Well, what do you mean? This is irrelevant information. I'm sorry?
Yes.
Right. So if a person doesn't say something for constructive purposes, then they're putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. You're not saying anything in this, Don't say gossip. And at the same, even if it's true, do you remember telegrams? You know what that is? You don't know what it is? Okay. Telegrams was if you wanted to send like a quick message to somebody, you went to Western Union. What? No, not that. I'm not going that far. Take it easy. I'm not that old. Thanks a lot. In any event, you send a telegram, which means like
Morse code.
No, not even Morse code. Just a telegram. It's a short word.
1850.
It's not Morse code. It's we send a short line. Arrived safely. And how do you pay for that? You pay by the word. So you try to make sure that things were very concise. And what it was like, you paid the guy, you gave the message, and he sent it, and the person would get a telegram that said what the message was. And realizing that you pay for every word is an important idea. It used to be the phones used to be paid by the minute. Now, when you get a plan, you don't have to pay by the minute. But it's an important idea, watching how we speak, to make sure not to be careful how we speak. The importance of judging people favorably. very important. You could see a circumstance and not know the whole story. And very important to judge people favorably. The story I like to say over is about this woman who was waiting for her flight, and she had a bag of kosher cookies, and the guy sitting next to her waiting for the flight was a religious guy and sticking his hand into the bag and taking cookies out. And she was like, taking my cookies? And she's taking it, he's taking it. And he took the last one. But she didn't say anything. Then she got onto the flight and she opened up her bag and she realized he had the same bag of cookies that she did, and she was eating from his cookies and her bag was complete. So we have to be careful. We have to judge people favorably. Many times we don't know the story, the whole story. I'll try maybe next week. You get something from, there's an organization called the Chavetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, which is an organization that promotes speaking nicely about others. And in the shul, we have every Shabbos, we have a new sheet called Adarabba from them, which has circumstances about what's the law. Should you say this? Should you tell the person not? And also examples of people we have to judge people favorably. So maybe God willing, maybe next week I'll make copies for you so you'll have a sample of that. It's very, very beautifully done, and gives us an idea of food for thought, how to handle different situations and how to judge people favorably. So we're saying not to gossip, even if it's true, and only to see if it's really relevant before you decide on it. And by the way, there's a prohibition not only of speaking lashon hara, speaking ill about others. There's a prohibition of listening or even believing. Take it with a grain of salt. Maybe that's what they're thinking, but maybe not. Don't stand by idly when someone is being hurt. Someone is in danger, or someone needs help. This is a very painful subject for me because during World War II in the United States, there were many Jews who did not do enough to try to save the Jewish community, what they were facing, the devastation they were facing. And in 1943, there was a rabbis' march on Washington. Orthodox rabbis came and as one person who wrote about the article, clear the way for the rabbis. This was the first and probably last time the station master at Washington, D.C.'s Union Station shouted those words. It was days before Yom Kippur, and more than 400 rabbis came to the United States government to action to save the Jews from Hitler. And they begged to meet with Roosevelt. And unfortunately, non-religious Jews told them, don't meet with these rabbis. They're like they're from the dark, they just came out of the Dark Ages. One of them was Stephen S. Weiss. Told them, don't meet with them. And the president had time. They looked at it. Dr. Stephen S. Weiss was president of the American Jewish Congress, and another fellow, Samuel Rosenin, American Jewish Committee. They were embarrassed by the protests, and they shouldn't have been. They should have been proud of them. And to me, there's a synagogue named after Stephen S. Weiss, a school named after him. He told the president not to meet with them. And this, to me, was Weiss condemned the Orthodox rabbinic parade. It was painful, not even even lamentable exhibition, and is offending the dignity of the Jewish people. Jews were dying by the millions. Why in the world would you tell Roosevelt not to meet with them? because it didn't fit into your vision of Judaism and you didn't like that, too bad. They were right and you were wrong. And to me, it was like I said, there were many great people who really did great things to save Jews during the Holocaust. Rabbi Aaron Kotler escaped the United States at the beginning of the Second World War, and he established the Vad Hatzal, the Rescue Committee. And they had a meeting with this American Secretary of Treasury, Henry Morgenthau, and asked for his assistance. He was accompanied by a person, and Rabbi Aaron couldn't speak English, so he had a translator. So the Secretary of Treasury, Henry Morgenthau, said, if I seem to favor my Jewish brothers, I'll be out of office. And Rabbi Aaron said, saving Jewish lives is more important than holding even 20 positions like yours. And the interpreter was like a little bit like afraid to say it. And he said, no, tell him what I said. And he eventually did help. He helped Jews afterwards because he was pushed by Rabbi Aaron Cutler to do that. So this is an important idea. There's some wonderful books we have in the library to save a Jew, about people who went out of the way, Jews and non-Jews, to go out of the way to try to help Jews during the Holocaust. Mrs. Sternbach lived in Switzerland, and she would bribe Swiss officials not to send the Jews back to the Germans. The Swiss was supposedly neutral, but they weren't. And when Jews would escape into Switzerland, the Swiss authorities would take them and send them back into the clutches of the Nazis and be killed. And she left her son's bar mitzvah celebration on Shabbos in a car to get money to bribe the police chief to let go of Jews that had escaped and been caught on Shabbos, so that they shouldn't be sent back to in German hands. So this is an important idea. Don't stand by idly. Don't hate your brother in your heart. There's important ramifications of this in Gesundheit, and there's a nutrition. Yeah. Okay. One of the articles said a very nice thing. A lot of times people have agendas in their head and they're upset and they expect the other person to be a mind reader to figure out what they're thinking. And don't expect the other person to be a mind reader. Tell them what you're feeling. You're right, you're wrong, but talk about it. The importance to reprove somebody if they're making a mistake. You have to do it in the right way, not to embarrass them, but to give somebody, tell them something. Why is that important to tell somebody they're doing something wrong? Again, it has to be done in the right way, not to embarrass them. Why is that important? Why do you think?
Maybe so.
Maybe they'll learn from the mistakes. What else? It shows you care. You care. It shows you care. The Kapishitzer Rebbe, a great Hasidic rabbi, met some people that were smoking cigarettes on Shabbos. And that one is prohibited from doing that on Shabbos. And now they smoke on Shabbos. So the Kapishitzer Rebbe said to them, you know, it's Shabbos, you shouldn't be doing that. It's, not an appropriate thing. Is it worse to do it on Yom Kippur? It's also wrong. It's, and they turned to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, mind your own business. And he said very gently to them, if I walked by and you were bleeding with a knife wound, and I offered to help, would you tell me to mind my own business? What difference does it make if your body is bleeding or if your soul is bleeding? Very beautiful, very beautiful thing. And he walked away. He didn't, And the next week they waited for him, Rabbi, we're not smoking on Shabbos anymore. Because he cared very deeply. And wasn't being angry. He just don't take revenge on your neighbor. And a very important mitzvah is loving your fellow as yourself. And Rabbi Lulav said, I learned the real way of loving your fellow as yourself from a drunk. Two drunks were sitting together, and one of them said, can you pass me some of the drink? And he said, well, why should I give you? It says, we're friends. It says, we are friends? What do I need? He says, how am I supposed to know? And then you're not really my friend. And Rabbi Lulav said that's what it means to be a friend to somebody, is to try to figure out what do they need. And the article brings on page 662 some ideas of how do you love a fellow as yourself. Lower left side. Examples of how one can fulfill this commandment of loving your fellow as yourself. Your affection for another should be real, not feigned. Always treat others with respect. Always seek the best for them. Join in their pain. Greet them with friendliness. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Assist them physically, even in matters that are not very difficult. Be ready to assist with small and moderate loans and gifts. Do not consider yourself better than them. It's a very beautiful, just these are samplings of what we can do. So there's a lot in the Parsha, a lot to cover, but we got at least a good taste of some of the things here to do about how to love our fellows as ourselves and how to be the best that we can be and try to attempt to be holy. So, any questions, thoughts, comments? Open? Questions, thoughts, comments? Open. On Zoom or live? Going once? Diane, take care. Diane, it's quieter a little bit in Israel.
Well, I don't know. They're talking about starting up again in a few minutes, so.
Oh boy, but it's been quiet the past few days, past week or so.
Quiet, past few days. It's been great.
Right. Should help. Everyone should be safe.
Thank you.
Take
And
care,
thank you for
Diane.
tonight's session.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for today's
You're
session.
very welcome. Take care.
Good.
Take care, Malcolm. All the best.
Thank you again, Rabbi. Thank you.
You're welcome. Roya, Samuel, and everybody else online, thank you for listening. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Take care.